You get to stand on there, and then you do a little dance.
Narrative leads everything for us. So we start with the story and the narrative, the journey that we want to take the player on. And then we see everything, every discipline in the studio as a tool to achieve that. Our sound, our animation, our environment art is all there in service of the story that we want to tell.
Ninja Theory games prioritize the narrative above everything else. The story is crucial, and every element of the game is in the service of that story, whether it's the cinematics, the gameplay, the combat, it all tells a story.
At the center of my work, even if it's sound, it's not really sound or music, it's narrative. I'm telling a story.
Hellblade continues to be a game that is about traversal and puzzle solving and combat, but we've really lent into the idea that all of these elements should be in service of the journey and the story, so that every step you take in the game is meaningful and is seen through Senua's unique lens.
So this is the performance capture stage. This is where all the magic happens and where we shot Senua, Saga, Hellblade II. And yeah, this is usually where our stage crew is seated and they're running all the motion capture from up here. Well, this is the HMC, which is a head-mounted camera that I get to wear during the performance capture shoots. This is my personal one, it's got my name on it. Usually when I'm filming, there's a green light that goes on and captures my facial expressions. And then I get to wear this little computer around my waist as well. So this is not fully put together right now. Usually there's a couple more things that are added to it. So we've got a large variety of different suits. I've got my own custom-made one. And these are our performance capture shoes. Very interesting.
Performance capture is such a almost ubiquitous thing in a lot of different kinds of media now, that for a lot of people say, oh, it's motion capture, that's fine. But we're so a part of the process here. If you look at Hellblade 1, they did amazing things with the system that they had, but this is showing you what you do when you go all in.
The technology has really advanced since the first game, so I think for me it has become a little bit easier to bring across all these emotions, because you can really see every little face movement now, every little twitch. You can see when I'm nervous or anxious, like I don't have to overact anymore. So I think that's been really, really helpful.
I think the first game is an example of this is what you can do if you have a go, but this is what you do when you really commit.
Performance capture has taken a real step forward. We now have our own performance capture stage here within our studio, which is fantastic. Certainly a step up from our boardroom, meeting room performance capture set up on the first game.
Yeah, so this is our stage, and we've got lots of cameras that are capturing the movement. We can see my movement on that monitor over there. We've got a couple of projectors that can project the environment onto the floor, which helps me to kind of know where everything is when I'm performing. And yeah, we've got like a structure on the ceiling which allows us to hang stuff down from the ceiling, so we can do stunts, or I can be put into a harness and I can pretend to be swimming, for example. So yeah, lots of different possibilities here.
We've had some amazing builds. So we had a 3-section climbing wall that went all the way up to the ceiling, and we could adjust the angles on that. We've had a boat deck in here that could accurately pitch and yaw and roll.
Where do you T-pose? Usually, is there a T-pose?
It's right there on this green mark. So this is where I start off every time. And then I get to do a range of movements, so it's called a ROM, and that puts my character basically into the system.
And then Senua was born.
Yes. There's something here.
They are not.
I need to find out what it is.
They're dead.
In Hellblade 2, our focus has been on immersion and delivering a journey of cinematic immersion. The way that we achieve that is by translating the real world into the game. Technology and techniques have now allowed us to take real-life locations in Iceland, for example, and to bring them into the game world.
If you looked at the real life location, we have to kind of make some compromises in terms of what the layout is to kind of to fit with the gameplay and the narrative of it. So we've kind of made alterations to the landscape to kind of facilitate that. So adding in different routes and things like that. But fundamentally, if you were to go to the real location and kind of do an A/B, you would get a sense of that it is the same space, but we've got kind of a layer of additional dressing on top of that to kind of help work within the game.
With our principal cast now, we have real-world costumes that we create in real life, and then we scan and process those into the game.
So this time around, I got to have a real-life costume. Obviously, I didn't get to wear this on stage because we cannot capture that. But every now and again, for reference shoots, I got to dress up as Senua. It takes about 8 or 9 hours to get into the full costume, including hair and makeup, so it's quite a long process. But I think it really helped me to connect with the character more because I got to see myself in the costume, in the makeup. I got to move around. I got to feel all the fabrics, like how do they feel when I move? What sounds do they make? Like it just made me feel like I was really in the shoes of Senua.
In Hellblade 1, we spent 2 days capturing combat. In Hellblade 2, we've spent 69 days capturing our combat. And all of that really is in service of making the world and story as believable as possible so that we can truly immerse players.
Realism was important to us, but realism means a very grounded combat. And I think it's been a very interesting journey because we used to do super crazy things, but we had to deal with proper fighting. We couldn't go beyond that, and that means that we had to treat the combat like you would treat a movie. Therefore, we had to film the combat the same way as you would film a movie.
We see Senua really in a brutal battle for survival. So we've worked hard to bring through the emotion and the feeling, and particularly in the case of combat, the brutality of the combat in the game.
I mean, Hellblade 1 was all about you had the story, but then you had the combat, and there are no real relation between both of them. So when we started in Hellblade 2, our goal was really to embed everything into it. So everything, all the combat kind of try to tell a little bit of a story, and that story is defined by the main script we've got in the game. And that has been key for us. Everything we've done has been our pillar for combat is if it doesn't support or it doesn't help the story, then we don't do it.
So this is the script for Hellblade 2. This isn't the final. This was one of the ones that we went to shooting with, and it's changed a little bit since then. But yeah, this is the size of it, pretty much. I cannot count the number of drafts. I honestly can't. It's been iterated on so much. It's in revision control, and I probably update it at least 3 times a week. Well, and not anymore. No, not anymore, because we're done, but before that, yeah. A lot of polish, a lot of iteration, a lot of love.
Usually before a shoot, I try to kind of have a bit of a quiet time, listen to some music over my headphones, read the script and like rehearse the script. And yeah, just trying to get into that headspace of Senua. Obviously, it can be quite tricky sometimes if it's a very emotional scene. You really have to kind of cut yourself off from everyone around you and get into this dark hole, so to say. And then there's other days where we, for example, shoot combat stuff, where I get to swing around a sword and everything is a bit more action-like. So I try to listen to something a bit more upbeat and like get into warrior mode. I had combat stage training, I had sword fighting lessons, mixed martial arts lessons. But yeah, we also had a stunt team that did most of the heavy lifting, thank God, because there was a lot of combat to shoot, so I could have never done this all by myself.
That scream, that voice. Something dark, Senua. You need to go up there. Don't let them see you coming. You need to find out. Don't let the monsters find you. You can do this, Senua.
I think a Ninja Theory game is one that is focused on our studio mission, which is to craft life-changing art with game-changing tech, which sounds really lofty, but what we really mean by that is that we want to push the boundaries of technology and techniques to make games that have an impact on people, that make them think and feel things. Particularly with Hellblade, we really valued the impact that that game had on people in terms of the mental health journey that the character went on, and that's been at the forefront of our thinking on Hellblade 2 is how do we make a game that has that chance again to, as a byproduct of a really compelling game, help people to understand a little bit more what it can be like to experience things like psychosis.
We're obviously tackling a very important subject, mental health, and that resonates with a lot of people. So we had a lot of people message us, like telling us how meaningful Senua's journey was to them and how they felt seen. And sometimes they even have relatives that don't understood what they were going through, but then they got them to play the game and they could finally see what people are going through that suffer from mental health conditions or psychosis in this case.
So just like Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, we've worked really closely with experts in both neuroscience and in the lived experience community. So it's just over 10 years ago now that I first reached out to Professor Paul Fletcher at the University of Cambridge, and he's been working with us very closely to understand from a neuroscience perspective what it's like to live with psychosis, and really importantly working with people at a local recovery college who live day to day with seeing things that other people don't, hearing things that other people don't, and having unique beliefs about the world around them.
Obviously we have Senua's Furies as a constant presence in the game, and how we develop those I think is actually quite interesting. So the exterior characters, Senua's companions through the journey and Senua herself, those events are kind of pre-scripted and recorded and put in the game, and at that point that's when our amazing audio director David works with Helen and Abby, who are the Furies, and they improvise a kind of commentary on everything that Senua is hearing and seeing. That way we get that kind of in the moment reactions that is so valuable. I don't think you could script the Furies. Obviously David or I will have suggestions for things that they could comment on and directions that they could take, but that kind of spontaneous improvisation I think is really, really important for their genesis. This
is our main way of getting into Senua's mind. With this mic we record all the Furies in this room. It's a room that sounds good. It has, when we put the computer down, it has no noise. Basically what it does is super simple. As you see, it mimics an average size head, and it has the 2 ears as we do. So basically when you record, it has a microphone inside every ear. What it does is replicates the way we hear, and we hear in 3 dimensions, like we hear spatialized. So this is the same. Imagine a sound is coming from here, and it's gonna hit there. It's gonna come first to this ear. So the time that it takes to go from here and the time difference to the other ear, you're gonna understand where it's coming from, how loud it is, the volume of the difference volume, and it more or less gonna tell you it's coming from there, and I think it's a car, and I think it's this far. This is also that we experimented with in Hellblade. Now there is all the acoustics are playing a part, so it's very beautiful.
What's changed in Hellblade 2 is that for the first time we're seeing Senua experience her own unique reality at the same time as sharing the world with other people who have different models of the world. So we're exploring things like what it can be like to hear voices whilst trying to maintain a conversation with someone else at the same time. We also find Senua as a character who, at the end of Hellblade 1, has to an extent accepted and come to a point of understanding of her experiences. So in Hellblade 2, her psychosis is no less strong, but there's certainly a different balance of power. So it's been really important for us to talk to people about what it's like in that stage of their mental health journey. Psychosis, and I think mental health is certainly not static. People do go on a journey, so it's been really important for us to understand after that initial phase of experiencing it for the first time, what happens beyond that. And that's been really, really useful for us to have that opportunity to speak to those people.
I think Senua and I have a lot in common. Because I was there from the beginning of the project, I got to help shape the character a lot. And also I got to put my own personal experiences with psychosis and some trauma and things like that into the character. So what I usually do is, if I get a script for the game, is I read it and I try to figure out what the emotions are. And then I kind of go deep within myself and try to remember times in my life where I felt the same or similar emotions as the character, and then I try to connect the two. So yeah, it can get quite deep sometimes.
Jumping up to a way more realistic looking game is that you then start noticing the things that aren't as realistic, and so that gives you a lot more work into sort of bringing the other things up to the same level. So it's a double-edged sword in a way. Like, you go, oh yeah, the environment now looks incredible. Right, now we have to get the animation incredible, the VFX incredible. Like, so it does give you more work, but it's a good challenge. I think making games is all about problem solving. When you start, you're right. You sort of go, okay, let's do this. And then you're like, how do we do that? I've no idea. Let's figure out how to do it. And that's one of the joys of it. It's a labour of love, that's for sure. Lots of problems to solve, new technology to learn. I think, that never stops in the games industry. It evolves so quickly. So you always have to be on your toes and kind of keeping up to date on what's new and what you need to learn.
It's extremely hard. It's really, really hard. It requires a lot of effort, communication, technology, maths, physics. It's just really complicated. And after spending years doing something, when you get a little message that say, hey, I play your game and I feel all these things, it's amazing. It makes you completely whole. Like, okay, what I do, it matters. It matters to someone. It doesn't matter if it's just one person. But if it changes the way you perceive the world, if it makes you think a bit, if it makes you feel something, if it makes you a little tear, that is great.
One of the things that people might not know is that Hellblade 2 has been built entirely from scratch. So there is nothing of Hellblade 1 in Hellblade 2. We built it entirely from scratch. And that's a really difficult thing to do. Like, creating games is actually very difficult and takes a lot of passion and energy. And it's why I love our studio and our team here, because they're so full of that passion, and we're all aligned on what we want to achieve, what our ambition is. But it's hard. It's really hard for developers. It takes a lot out of them. It's not just the time they put into it and the energy, but it's a work of passion. And ultimately, as a studio, and I think this is the case for many studios, we're trying to create art. And really, for me, the purpose of art is to be interpreted and to have meaning for people. And that's a really difficult thing to do. And I think it's also a very brave thing to do. We stand out there as a studio saying, this is our art, this is our creative, and we're proud of it, and we hope you love it too. And I think that's a very brave thing for any creative to do, and we feel very proud, and we feel brave at the same time. It's been a great journey building this game. It's been a tough journey for the team. We have such a wonderful team here, about 80 developers working on the game, so we're a very close team, so we're very excited for launch. Beyond that, as a studio, we'll continue to focus on trying to immerse our players in worlds and taking them on journeys.
We've got a really amazing team here. We've got a lot of expertise in a lot of areas. We've built some amazing new tools and systems for Hellblade 2 that we want to continue evolving.
kind of push into our next game. In game development, you're always learning, and you're never completely satisfied. You always see something in the, I wish we could have done A, B, C or something to improve this. So I'm really excited to do that.
Continue telling these rich, immersive narratives. And I'm really, really glad to be a part of that.
The team here just puts sort of so much love and passion into it, and they constantly want to push where we're going. So we just want to keep pushing and keep telling kind of really interesting stories that are meaningful and make players think about things.
I feel a responsibility as a studio that we have an opportunity to not just make great games, but also use those games to do good in the world. And so that's what we'll continue to focus on.
We just have to wait and see what comes next.